Thank you for giving attention to this video and for having interest in the subject of plant evolution. With this project, I am trying to understand the early evolution of angiosperms during the Mesozoic, so during the Jurassic and the Cretaceous, with the help of different fields like paleontology, paleoclimatology, or phylogenetics. I try to combine data to understand which could have been the environmental factors that would have driven angiosperm evolution and the apparition of the different orders or families among this group. So now I can present to you the different tools that I used in this purpose. So the goal of this theoretical model is to put aside the time divergence of different orders or families among angiosperms and what we think we know about the environmental factors during the same time frame, like climatic parameters. Another goal for this work could also be to give to this theory some predictive value in order to predict at different taxonomic levels physiological or ecological characteristics of plants. But this is very difficult among the plant kingdom due to convergent evolution, which blurs the lines. Before to start, I want to warn my audience against the fact that the work was highly speculative and that I used a lot of inductive generalizations on the data that I gathered in the course of this project. For instance, among the phylogenetic tree of angiosperms and between different orders or between different families, when I observed a trait or a particular characteristic being shared by a majority of individuals among a group, a taxa, I often considered that the trait was shared also by the common ancestor of this group as a synapomorphy, but when this trait was shared only by the most basal individuals in the group, I then considered that it was a primitive trait like a plesiomorphy, which would have then undergone transformations thanks to evolution. Also, I used the STEM group, like fossil data from paleontology, not only in the timeline, but concerning also their geographical distribution throughout the world. And I used this data to propose in a very speculative way migration routes, for instance, or also a timeline of apparition of different orders of different taxa of plants. So this data never underwent any statistical treatment or any quantitative treatment of any kind in the course of this work, as it would have been the case if the work was serious, like a scientific work which could be published afterwards. Here I want to thank different media and authors who stimulated my reflection. So there is this French microbiologist and researcher, Marc-André Selos, who published several books on the subject of plants and the ecosystem of soil. So it helped me to understand better the complex interaction between plants and the soil, and especially fungi. There's a very aesthetic and qualitative YouTube channel of PBS Eons, which is very enlightening concerning the evolution of different groups of living organisms throughout the eons. I used it especially here for the Mesozoic era. Dominique Walliman also is the author of Domain of Science, and I used his map of plant to represent the phylogenetic tree of angiosperms here. And so I used his map and I transformed it to represent in several steps the evolutive transformations of the and acquisitions of the angiosperms. Atlas Pro also is a YouTube channel, very aesthetic and very interesting concerning the paleogeography and paleoclimatology. There is also Wikipedia, which is an abundant source of data concerning the ecological preferences and geographical distribution of different groups of plants at different taxonomic levels. And the New Phytologist also is a scientific journal which helped me a lot to browse different data concerning the physiology of plants, especially concerning their vessel elements or trachees, depending on the plant group, and the importance also of the perforation type of the plate. And this YouTube channel, SciShow also, which is also very enlightening, very educative, which helped me a lot also to understand plant evolution especially. So here is the method I used for the following slides, where I combined two different kinds of data. One from the molecular clock estimates, which is based on the rate at which mutations accumulate in the DNA of plants, and one from paleontology database like mindat.org, where we can find chronological and geographical data on the fossil of different groups of plants, on stem groups. And I tried combining this data with also information from paleogeography or paleoclimatology to try understanding better what could have been the environmental factors which would have driven the apparition of different groups of plants. Here in this slide, I put a global overview of the entire phylogenetic tree of seed plants, and especially for the part of angiosperms, idest flowering plants, so that you can, at any moment during the video, come back to this part to see which part of the phylogenetic tree I am talking about. So not all orders here are represented, but the most known of them. And there are small drawings of famous plants in each of these orders. So I put this entire schema here so that you can always come back to it. Here is a slide to describe the subconductive vascular tissue in the plant. Throughout the entire body of the plant, there are several arrangements of this conductive tissue, and we find xylem both in the root, in the stem, and in the leaf, along with other tissues. But when we focus on the xylem, we find that it is composed of vessel elements or tracheids, depending on the plant. And the end wall of the vessel elements is showing perforation plate, which can be of different types, and we will be discussing it in the following slides. So let's begin with the Triassic, when the landscape was mainly dominated by plants like big tree ferns and other Pteridophyta members. But we could have also found cycadales and ginkgoales, which were widely distributed during this time, while other gymnosperms like pineals and gnetales took their full swing later on, likely during the Jurassic. The reproduction of gymnosperms is thought to have been linked to pollinating insects among the holometabolic which appeared during the Triassic. We have the groups like Diptera, Mecoptera, Coleoptera, and Neuroptera, which all have been retrieved in fossil ambers, fossilized on reproductive parts of gymnosperms, sometimes even with pollen or on their mouth parts. And we see also that gymnosperms produce pollination drops, which are thought to have played a role in attracting those pollinating insects already during the Triassic and also during the Jurassic. And those same groups of insects are also thought to have played an important role in helping the angiosperms to dominate the ecosystems during the Cretaceous, especially concerning Coleoptera, and we will talk about all this later. So it is also during the Triassic that the angiosperms first arose, as the molecular clock indicates, and the most basal of angiosperm taxa is Umbrellals, and it is today still represented by one living species, Umbrella, which is found in humid tropical forests in the understory. And it shows a primitive trait because it has tracheids instead of vessel elements. So tracheids are also found in gymnosperms, whereas vessel elements are found throughout the phylogenetic tree of angiosperms, except for Umbrella, for instance. And so it is considered to be a primitive trait, which allows for the transport of sap along the stalk until the broad leaves where the photosynthesis can occur, and the leaves can also here being broad can be considered as an adaptation to the understory conditions, because in the shade of higher trees there is less light that strikes the leaf, and that allows for the evapotranspiration. So the leaf being broad can evapotranspirate more and allow for the transport of sap and for the photosynthesis to occur. Here we can also see that the plant has flowers. Umbrella has flowers, nectar producing flowers. So here the wet soils in which the most basal angiosperms would have grown could allow for the transport of sap and for the production of nectar, and it can be seen here as a phenomenon of convergent evolution between the angiosperms and gymnosperms, using then the nectar to attract insects and use them and in the strategy of their reproduction. So it seems that the vessel element would have appeared near the end of the Triassic or during the early Jurassic. and it is already present in the Austrobilaeal, which is the most basal of all angiosperm taxa, which also contains vessel elements. And we can see also in this group that the vessel elements show scalariform perforation plates, which is still a quite primitive trait among angiosperms bearing vessel elements. But the single fact that it has vessel elements renders those plants more productive, because it accelerates the transport of sap, and it can yield more productive plants in wet understory stations in wet soils. So it could have been an advantage for those plants growing in the understory of humid tropical forests. And this trait is also correlated in those plants with genomic duplication. So it could have been an important transformation of their microscopic anatomy. So the vessel elements also appeared in another group of plants among gymnosperms, the Netophyta, and this can be considered as a phenomenon of convergent evolution in parallel with the angiosperms, since this group also evolved then vessel elements, but with a particular kind of perforation plates, the foraminate plates, which is different than the scalariform perforation plate found in the most basal groups of the angiosperm tree. And maybe the evolutionary success of angiosperms can be explained here by the fact that scalariform perforation plates later on would have allowed for the evolution of simple perforation plates, and the simple perforation is correlated with the higher level of photosynthesis and sap transport, optimizing then their evolutionary success. So at the Triassic-Jurassic boundary, the climate underwent a major transformation due to a huge release of carbon dioxide during the Carufera eruption, and this led to a global increase of the temperatures, but also to aridification. And this meant that the intertropical zone aridified, and it transformed into a huge desert, separating two worlds evolving in parallel but separately. And there were the north, so a humid and temperate zone gathered around the pole, was comprising Sequoia, Chiadopithys, or other Saxodiaceae species. But around the south there were Araucariaceae species mainly. And also there is something very interesting happening in the evolution of ferns, since they received a dwarfism gene by horizontal gene transfer from Mercantiophyta, so a plant, also a very small plant called the hornworts, which is related to Bryophyta and mosses. And this strategy, from the point of view of the ferns, was probably to seek a shelter in the shadow of higher plants and trees. And this phenomenon of dwarfism strategy will be also followed by angiosperms later on during the Cretaceous. So before the end of the Jurassic, the angiosperms radiated into several groups, and there are here several points to consider. First, the austrobilaeals are confined to the south, while the other groups, Edests, chloranthals, manulids, alismatals, acorals, and ranunculals, are retrieved in the northern humid and temperate zones. All those taxa show arborescent forms or shrubs and also vines, but always are based on lignified tissues, with the exception of the monocots. They all have a scalariform perforation plate in the end wall of the vessel element. And it is very interesting also to note that the Eupteria taxa among ranunculals is the only one which is not herbaceous, and it is the most basal of all the families and taxa among this order. For the monocots, the alismatals and acorals often show species adapted to aquatic medium. And also among this part of the angiosperm phylogenetic tree, the monocots, we only have herbaceous species which also can be linified and can reach some good height, but they never show the real shape of a tree again. And it might be explained by the fact that it had diverged before the end of the Jurassic, so very early, into the herbaceous form. So if they adapted very early to this shape, it could also be related to a loss of their genetic capacity to come back to the arborescent form. Before to leave the Jurassic to enter the Cretaceous, I would have a word about the reasons I think explain why angiosperm scalariform shrubs never really left their understory niche and never became canopy dominating trees nor herbaceous species during the Jurassic. So I think this is due to a phenomenon called competitive niche exclusion, because very early during this time frame, the other species like gymnosperms, sequoia or taxodiaceae or other species, but also cycads, ginkgoals, already conquered the canopy and were highly specialized in this niche. And the same reasoning is, I think, valid for herbaceous species with ferns and horsetails, which are very highly adapted to the reproduction and growth on humid soils. So during the Jurassic, angiosperm scalariform shrubs would have been confined to the understory in these humid forests. But during the Jurassic, we still see angiosperms radiating aquatic species like nymphaeals at first, and then monocots like alismatals and acorals. And I think this was allowed by the simplification of their plumbing relative to tracheids we would find in gymnosperms. And this allows, I think, for faster growth and reproduction when the water resource is abundant. The limitation of their size and the suppression of secondary xylem and of lignified tissues might be related to the simplification of their plumbing, and this can be also a phenomenon we would find later on during the Cretaceous when the other angiosperm taxa would radiate into the herbaceous niche on land. During the early Cretaceous, the climate becomes more humid before 130 million years, and this correlates with the diversification of two taxa among angiosperms. Indeed, a proto-magnolid during this time frame give rise to laurels, magnolias, cannelals, and piperails, while in the meantime we see among eudicots emerging two new orders with proteals and trochodendrals. Among proteals we have fossils of Sapindopsis for this period, and also the most basal of its families, which is Sabiaceae, has an estimated divergence time which is situated during this period. All these groups among eudicots and magnolids are still confined to the northern hemisphere, as shown by today's repartition of its members, but also shown by the geographic situation of its fossils. And this phenomenon, this isolation, can be explained by the fact that during early Cretaceous, the climate, although becoming more humid, can have retained some desertic zones, efficiently isolating the north from the south. Also, I would like to raise here a question about one print I discovered in limestone in the French Alps, which you can see in the photo here. This mark is to me reminiscent of the vegetative and reproductive structures of Acorus. So is this mark a fossilized print of a primitive member among the order of Acoral? I do not know, but this would validate the estimates we can find with the molecular clock for the apparition of monocots, which would be older than the beginning of the Cretaceous, although the fossils are maybe not always pertinent with this idea. During the Haut-Trivian, between 130 to 125 million years, the climate became even more humid and reached a state which we could call pantropical due to the apparition of many seaways between the drifting land masses, and this altogether with the dramatic increase in global temperatures led to an acceleration of the water cycle on the globe, and humid and tropical climate spread all around the globe, allowing the apparition and the migration of several taxa among angiosperms. So indeed, we see during the same time frame the apparition of buxals, Araceae, which is a family among alismatals, but other orders among monocots like Dioscoreales and Pandanals, and also many groups, many taxa among magnolids also appeared and followed the same route of migration from the north to the south to colonize newly available ecosystems, thanks to this connection between humid, temperate, and tropical zones. from the northern to the southern pole. For the following slides, I will use colors with underlining and arrows to show migration routes whenever I notice that in the phylogenetic tree I see a displacement of the main geographic repartition of the taxa. Still during the same humid and pantropical period of the Haut-Trivian, the arrival of eudicots in the southern continents led to their extraordinary diversification due to many newly available habitats, ecosystems and ecological niches, which created a lot of new opportunities. And this led to the apparition of many new orders. For instance, in basal eudicots, there is Gunerals, Berberidopsidales, Dilenials, Santalals, Saxifragales, and Caryophyllales. Among true rosids, we have Vitals, and among asterids, Cornals, Aquifolials, and Ericals. A common trait which is often shared by these orders is that when we look carefully at the very base of their branch of the phylogenetic tree for each of these orders, we see that the groups that diverged the earliest are often small trees or shrubs showing scalariform perforation plates and often growing in humid climates, however with some exceptions for the growing conditions. While the rest of their branch of the phylogenetic tree, I mean families and groups which diverged later, are represented by a wider range of shapes like lianas, herbaceous plants or big trees, often showing simple perforation plates and growing in a lot of different climates. And I have examples of this general rule. For instance, among vitals, we have here the genus Lea, which diverged very early among this order. It is the most ancient group, and it is a tree, while the rest of all genuses among this family and order are vines. Among Caryophyllales, we have Rhabdodendraceae, which is a family of trees growing in humid and tropical climates, while a lot of other groups among Caryophyllales are herbaceous plants with simple perforation plates, adapted to drier climates. Among Saxifragales, we have Peridiscaceae, which is a family of trees growing in humid climates. And among Santalales, we have Olacaceae at the base of this order, which is also a family of trees growing in humid climates. Dilenials and Berberidopsidales are orders which are mostly represented by trees growing in humid climates, although we also find in Dilenials Hibertia, which is a group of small herbaceous plants. Those orders are mainly represented in tropical climates. And among Gunerals, we have Myrothamnaceae, which is a family of trees also. And it is quite difficult here to say whether this family is representative of the stem group of Gunerals, or if it is Guneraceae, which is a herbaceous plants. In fact, if Guneraceae is representative of the stem group, it would be an exception of this general rule and this global trend
which seems to be followed by all these orders I just presented to you. I also have to say that um, the trees growing in humid climates I find at the very base of their branch of the phylogenetic tree for each of these orders are thought in my theory to be representative of the stem group of these orders, although these families like Olacacea, Peridiscacea, Rhabdodendracea could have appeared later than the Hauterivian, and it would mean that they show characteristics which were retained a long time until the recent periods, while other groups in the same orders that diverged later would be representative of adaptations that came later with the climatic shifts we will talk about in the following slides.
And the Barremian period, which spans from 125 to 120 million years, was marked by a significant drying trend of the climate, and this aridification process led many groups among angiosperms to opt for a dwarfism strategy, and becoming herbaceous, they entered into competition with other small plants like ferns, horsetails, or lycopoda. But this war is going to be won by angiosperms due to the optimization of sap transport and photosynthesis, thanks to simple perforation plates in the end wall of the vessel elements. But this optimization is, I think, secondary in the evolution process and appears probably during the Aptian and Albian as a continuous process among the many groups of angiosperms which had made this transition from shrub or tree to herbaceous forms. The world changed during the Barremian, and the pantropical climate of the Hauterivian now has come to an end, and the cosmopolitan distribution of the angiosperms is probably stalled, and now we can see dichotomized distribution again, with in the northern hemisphere the saxifragales evolving Paeonia. In the ranunculales we have the Papaveraceae. The alismatales evolved Tophialdiaceae. And still in the northern hemisphere we see appearing also Nelumbonaceae. So these groups are characterized by herbaceous forms, although Nelumbonaceae is also often found in aquatic environments. It's also noteworthy to notice that the Tophialdiaceae is the first group among alismatales to evolve in land environments which are undergo frequent drying seasons, etc. And today, Tophialdiaceae are found in the northern hemisphere in a continental environment. So in the southern hemisphere, we also have the same trend in evolving herbaceous forms. For instance, we see appearing Gunera among Gunerals, but also Zygophyllales among rosids, and among monocots
we see appearing lilials first, and then asparagales, which are all herbaceous plants, uh, and the anomocloidae also appear during this period as being the most basal and primitive forms among the poals. Phytomelanin is also a synapomorphic trait found in asparagales, and this is why their seeds are so black and also so resistant to the sun and to the drought. So since it is synapomorphic trait, it was very likely present in the common ancestor of the whole order as an adaptation to this particular climate of the Barremian. But also there are Santalals and Vitals I am now going to talk about in the southern hemisphere, here shown in green. Santalals also transitioned from shrubs and trees to more herbaceous species, but they also seem to have followed another strategy because there are many parasitic plants in this order, and considering also vitals, there is also another strategy since most of the members in this order and family are vines. So maybe this order adapted to the possibility of climbing after trees growing in temperate or humid environments. So here also we have to take into account the fact that herbaceous species undergo a very significant shortening of their life cycle, so they can reproduce faster, more, and it accelerates their evolution, helping them to overtake other the other plants which would grow in the same environments. So the competition is very hard, and it is likely that we see also arise the first steps, because many environment in the continental land masses are too dry to allow for the development of forests, and also for the colonization by Pteridophyta or other primitive herbaceous and small plants. So under 600 millimeters of precipitation, the steppes can develop due to the possibility of herbaceous angiosperms to grow in drier environments. So this is an open question. It is likely that once the angiosperms have developed the possibility to grow in their herbaceous form, they would have also colonized very large geographical areas and allowing the steppes to appear. Also, angiosperms seems to have overtaken gymnosperms during the same time frame by inducing many fires by the simple fact that their fast growth can allow for the accumulation of a lot of dry matter near to the ground, and in these conditions they can trigger the fires, which would then kill the trees, the gymnosperms, and renew the fertility in the soil at the same time, allowing for their fast growth and the rapid use of this new fertility. So it is very likely that the gymnosperms adapted to these new conditions by evolving pines precisely during the Barremian. And pines are characterized by thickened barks, but also fire-opened cones, which are adaptations to frequent fires. And it is then very likely that the first herbaceous angiosperms were pyrophytic plants. And it's also noticeable in the charcoal deposits, which dramatically increase during this time frame. And it's also noteworthy to say that the pines also adapted actively to these new conditions and frequent fires by stunting the growth of herbaceous angiosperms by acidifying the soils, thanks to optimized ectomycorrhizae symbiosis, but also by slowing the turnover of organic matter and its decomposition with the help of terpene production. So there's seemingly a real war between gymnosperms and angiosperms, also a very rude competition, not only then between angiosperms and other herbaceous plants like ferns and horsetails, but also with higher plants like gymnosperms. And this is something then which is we can see in the fossil record with the charcoal deposits.
So I think that during the Barremian, the alternating dry and humid seasons allowed for the angiosperm scalariform shrubs to leave their niche first towards the herbaceous niche by producing species ever smaller due to selection pressures leading them to become faster in their growth and reproduction, but also to allow them to escape drought and fires during these ever drier forests. So there is also in this dwarfism strategy a kind of a pyromaniac also weapon which is handled here because those fires would impede the growth of slower and higher trees, allowing for herbs and small shrubs to reproduce in the interval. And so the faster growth would allow them also to escape the droughts when there are no water for the growth and reproduction of these scalariform herbs. But having dormant seeds, they would survive along these dry seasons and wait for the water to come back. And during those short time frames, they would take the advantage over ferns and horsetails because they don't restart from scratch, having their seeds in the place when ferns and horsetails have to come back from other places by migrating. And also these plants, horsetails and ferns, have to reproduce during the humid season because of external fecundation and with swimming sperms. But angiosperms have internal fecundation, which is also an advantage when those dry and humid seasons alternate. During the time frame spanning over Barremian, Aptian and Albian, there are several adaptations which come either in a simultaneous or in a consecutive way, and I am going to try in the following slides to make sense out of their combination in the plants of that time, the synergistic effect of which can be difficult to understand in given conditions. So first, when we glance at the very base of the phylogenetic trees of the different orders among eudicots, we can see herbaceous species diverging very early during this time frame around the Barremian. And those herbaceous species often bear scalariform perforation plates. And we see also in the chart here taken from Jan de Boer et al. In 2012 that during the time frame of the Barremian and around it, we see a rise in the leaf vein density, but also in stomatal conductance, which could be linked in these ancient herbaceous species bearing scalariform perforation plates to a simplification of the plumbing, which can be related to a decrease in the number of the bars in scalariform perforation plates. Then those species with fewer bars could get narrower leaf veins, leading to a higher vein density, which could also lead to higher stomatal density and then to a better stomatal conductance, allowing then for those herbaceous species to gasp for CO2, which is also decreasing during this period, and which could then become a limitative factor. And this at high evaporative costs, the water being not limitative during humid seasons with alternating dry and humid seasons during those ages. This acceleration of their metabolism could allow for the herbaceous scalariform species to overtake ferns and horsetails very progressively, likely.
The genomic comparison of different plant taxa revealed a wave of whole genome duplications around 120 million years ago, and the genes which were retained from these events are involved in the resistance to water scarcity and to droughts. And these genes are likely involved in the simplification of the plumbing, which allows sap transport, and the apparition of simple perforation plate is linked to a higher leaf vein density, but also to a higher stomatal density, which allows for a better conductance of gases and a higher photosynthesis rate. The simplification of plate is first linked to the reduction of the number of bars in the scalariform plate, but it ultimately leads to simple perforation plates, which I think have arisen first in the metaxylem before to have appeared then in the protoxylem. And this is what we can conclude from the article of Field et al. In 2013, but also it's also an element we can conclude from the observation of the different plant species situated at the base of the phylogenetic tree of different Eudicot and Monocot taxa. And we can see in these plants retaining scalariform perforation plates that they first show a simple perforation plate in their metaxylem, while scalariform perforation plate is still present in the protoxylem, and it is not the reverse, indicating that the simple perforation plate first arose in the metaxylem before the protoxylem. Whenever simple perforation plates evolved in the protoxylem, it allowed for the thinning of the thinnest roots, which improved mineral and water uptake, but it also allowed for the reaching of the critical leaf vein density, which shortened the water transport path length under the value of the carbon dioxide transport path length, which allowed for the shrinking of the stomata with minimal water loss, which allowed for further densification of stomata and further carbon dioxide intake, and hence by a better photosynthesis rate. Altogether, these adaptations on the xylem plumbing arose in the course of the Aptian or during the Albian, and it correlates quite well with the spread of herbaceous angiosperm plants to new ecological niches where no plants could grow before, with rainfall under 600 mm per year. We have now plants in ecosystems like dry steppes, and in such conditions, pit vestitures could also help to lower the risk of drought embolisms. Many taxa appeared during Barremian, Aptian, and Albian, evolving as ever more productive herbaceous plants adapted to ever drier conditions. We have Portulacinae with cacti, Crassulaceae with succulent plants, accumulating osmotic sugars as well, and living on a particular xerophytic Crassulacean metabolism. Proteaceae, which lose mycorrhizae while developing proteoid roots, optimizing nutrition in dry and poor soils. Dasypogonaceae is adapted to arid climate, despite most later arecales being restricted to humid tropical climates, like palm trees. Also among monocots appear poales with Bromeliaceae, but also Anomocloidae, which is the first kind of grass. We also have Ixioleriaceae, the first kind of herbaceous landy asparagales to have migrated northwards, following Faboidae, and other nitrogen fixers like rosales and fagales seemingly have appeared in the northern hemisphere. Among rosids, herbaceous plants thrived and diverged until the rise of the latter malvales and brassicales orders, the most basal species of their crown groups being herbaceous plants like the family Neuradaceae for malvales or Tropaeolaceae for brassicales. Among asterids, we have asterales, a notable exception among asteroids, which will be otherwise retarded in this global evolutionary trend, as I am going to explain in a little while. Pit vestures might have evolved in the same time frame, particularly among simple perforation plates bearers, likely due to convergent evolution, because it limits the spread of embolisms related to water deprivation and heat, those air bubbles putting at risk of collapse the sap-transporting plumbing, especially in fast-growing herbaceous angiosperms, where flow is fast, not impeded by plate bars. Among these post-Bielayan taxa, a higher photosynthesis rate allowed for the production of more sugar, but also for water economy. Sugar and saved water can be reinvested in a greater expanse of nectar, thereby diverting pollinating insects from gymnosperms' pollination drops and allowing for a very tight coevolution between angiosperms and all insects which continued to live on pollination: Coleoptera, Diptera, Hymenoptera, and Lepidoptera, for instance. The apparition of bees indeed dates back to 120 million years ago. During these ages, asteroid orders seem to show a particular evolutionary pattern. Pre-Bielayan small trees showing scalariform perforation plates growing in general in humid climates seem to have been retained later among asteroids than among rosids and basal eudicots, maybe due to their confining in a geographical region where the climate took longer to dry up. This would explain the apparent continuous divergence of orders characterized by a predominance of lianeous plants growing under tropical climates throughout Aptian and early Albian. It seems to be the case for metenusals, icacinials, and gharials, but also for more diversified orders like dipsacales and apials, the most basal components of their crown groups being tropical trees indeed, and although having appeared later during Upper Cretaceous, could witness of the Pre-Bielayan strategy of their stem groups. Concerning the Lamide clade, their common ancestor also seems to be a tropical tree bearing fleshy fruits, according to Stull et al. In 2015, which might have helped its large-scale dispersal by animals, explaining how it gave way afterwards to several orders having seemingly undergone a habitus shift and a Balayan transition, when at last their late drying climates exerted selection pressures, and we thus end up with boraginals, lamials, and solanals, which are here circled in red. It seems that gentianals persisted longer in the same primitive physiology and waited till the KPG crisis to radiate herbaceous and simple perforated forms, in the same fashion as dipsacales and apials. When the climate became more humid in the end of the Albian Age and during the Cenomanian, this comeback of humidity seems to have played an important role in the further diversification of angiosperm groups and in the colonization of different ecological niches, for instance, reaching the canopy in forests. This comeback of humidity seems to have exerted its influence by several factors, which I can try here to decipher. For instance, the widening of the trunk vessels, which seems to have been allowed by the apparition of pit vestures, but also by simple perforation plates. This widening seems to have extended the range of diameters of vessels among the plant individual, and a greater range, a greater tip-to-bowl diameter gradient seems to be linked to the capacity of the plant to reach the canopy and produce big individuals. Also, the optimization of the photosynthesis by simple perforation plates and leaf vein density also allows for better photosynthesis and metabolism. And the thinning of the thinner roots also allows for the extraction of more micronutrients in the soils. And all these factors altogether seem to have favored the apparition of bigger angiosperm plants, like trees. During this period, those trees seem to have been limited to early successional floodplains. So other evolutionary events seem to be required yet to allow for angiosperms to dominate and to really dominate the ecosystems. Two different groups of angiosperms, each in a different hemisphere, seem to have followed the same pine mimicking strategy. Indeed, contrasts in humidity or temperature stress plants and favor ectomycorrhizae plant mutualism in seasonal or temperate ecosystems distant from the equator, helping simple-plated herbaceous angiosperms to reach the canopy in the end of the Albian, when humidity came back after a long period of photosynthesis and yield optimization. I think that the thinning of the thinnest roots in simple-plated protoxylem individuals also improved soil exploration and thus plant ectomycorrhizae contact, and higher photosynthesis rates and thus sugar production created opportunities interesting these fungi, ectomycorrhizae, thereby diverted from pines. In the northern hemisphere, after having countered pines' strategy, nitrogen fixers competing against each other will opt for this strategy due to high biomass yield thanks to nitrogen fixing, attracting ectomycorrhizae. For instance, there are fagals and rosals, often producing tannins, slowing down organic matter decay. In the southern hemisphere, in a phenomenon called convergent evolution, we have some group of plants like myrtles with Australian eucalyptus, which produce terpenes, which might have first been intended at setting fires, which can also be concluded among sapindales, both orders having a lot of pyrophytic species for myrtles and sapindales. But then, with the purpose of slowing down organic matter decay and cloud seeding, because we have this example with eucalyptus monospecific forests in which the condensation of rain clouds benefits the species. So in some case, maybe due to lower biomass yield or to more extensive root system emancipating the plant, mycorrhizae is abolished in pioneering plants, and other herbaceous plants adapted to very poor and dry soils. In the north, we have Brassicaceae, Caryophyllaceae or Amaranthaceae, and in the south there is Proteaceae, with the particular help of proteoid roots. So when the humidity comes back in the end of the Albian, it is likely that a surge of the biomass yield in nitrogen fixers and other groups of plants, which would also have evolved different characteristics, like simple perforation plates or wider trunk vessels or pit vestures, would take the chance to reach the canopy and produce bigger individuals, edest trees. And a harsh competition between these plants would allow for ectomycorrhizae to take advantage of such competition and establish a mutualism with some groups. And this leads to the situation we know today with monospecific forests, like oak forests, which are characterized by ectomycorrhizae, or also with eucalyptus forests in Australia. During the Maastrichtian, in the end of the Cretaceous, and right before the KPG crisis, we notice a surge of carbon dioxide, and I believe it is linked to the newly formed megathermal rainforests, which are composed mainly of angiosperms, because a higher leaf vein density and a higher photosynthesis yield, whenever the carbon dioxide rises back to its old level, might have favored individuals with a higher photosynthesis rate and a more efficient metabolism, allowing to grow higher in the equatorial and tropical forests, and evaporating more water due to a plumbing that allows more water to reach the canopy. And evapotranspiration would allow for the condensation of clouds, which is observed in megathermal rainforests, like in Southern America or in Africa, for instance, where in the center of the continents, the humid forests can still grow due to the forwarding of the humidity, thanks to the process of evapotranspirating and pushing forward rain clouds. So this could have been an advantage at the species level, and also at the level of the ecosystem, the entire ecosystems. During the Cretaceous and Paleogene crisis, the KPG crisis, it is interesting to notice that many groups of plants among asteroids appeared that are very common to today, like Apiaceae, Asteraceae, but also Solanaceae, Convolvulaceae, Gentianaceae, which are all often herbaceous plants adapted to meadows, and very common in the northern hemisphere. Maybe due to the fact that they would have been retained under selection pressures during this crisis, which were somehow analogous to the conditions we know today in the end of the tertiary era. Right after this crisis, Saliceae also, which are associated with ectomycorrhizae, appear in cold moist soils of the north and in the mountains, and the fact that poplars or willows can establish a relation of mutualism with ectomycorrhizae without producing tannins uh, is quite odd to me. But I am wondering if it is not if it's not possible that in fact these plants already grow in regions where the decay of organic matter is slowed down by the climatic conditions or due to the chemical composition of the soil, and that it is not required here to evolve tannin production to fight against competitors due to the fact that the conditions are already harsh enough. Concerning the rest of the evolution of angiosperms during the tertiary era, so after the KPG crisis, other evolutionary events, other environmental factors, and other changes would be of interest questioning. But also other factors which could also have played an important role in their evolution, like vessel grouping, ring porosity, or chemical composition of the cell wall, or other key structures. But this is for another work, and here I was essentially focusing on the climatic events during the Jurassic and the Cretaceous periods. Now, depending on your questions and your remarks, I can continue to further reference my sources in the description of the video, and maybe one day I will publish an improved version of this theoretical model. Thank you for having paid attention to this presentation.